on me that I've never really talked about World of Warcraft. Maybe 2 or 3 times in the past, and the most I ever talked about it was an unscripted video where I prattled on for about 10 minutes. So I think it's about time that I actually make a video dedicated to the game.
World of Warcraft has been a pretty big part of my gaming life. I started back in the middle of 2007. The way I got into it is a little strange. My friends Garrett and Will were into it, and they told me about a webcomic called Looking for Group. It started out as a parody of the game, but evolved into so much more. I quickly grew to like the undead warlock character Richard, and decided to get the game myself, and I grew instantly hooked. From Classic to Burning Crusade, I played with an undead warlock. I was told by Will, who played an undead rogue, that I sucked at the game. Garrett, who played a troll hunter, was nicer about it, and he would point me in the right direction to where to go to play my class, and who to ask in the guild for help, which no one could really offer any help, and I didn't understand the sources my friends pointed me to. I wanted to do dungeons and raids, but no one would help me get better at the game or better gear. I abandoned that character when Wrath of the Lich King came out and made the Death Knight you see me playing today. I didn't put much thought into its creation until after I grew attached to the character and wrote a backstory on it. I did a server transfer and met new friends, and they helped me get better at the game. And they pointed me to sources that were a lot more user-friendly, and eventually I became one of the best Death Knights on my server.
Then I took a very long extended break. I didn't pay that much attention to Cataclysm, and I didn't even make it to Missa Pandaria's first content patch. So you're not gonna see much of that stuff in this video of my top 10 favorite World of Warcraft dungeons and raids.
Now this is a list of my favorite dungeons and raids. It doesn't mean that they're the best or anything. It just means that I like them for certain reasons. Be it design, or what they have to do with the lore, their artistic appeal, or maybe I just had the most fun with them, or I think they're cool, or they appeal to me in some reason I know not why. But I do have some runner-ups that I wanted to mention that just didn't make the list. In no particular order, there's Old Sholomance, which for me was something I needed to conquer when I still had my Warlock, because I needed to get the Dreadsteed, but no one would help me. Eventually a patch just let you learn it, but I still wanted to destroy that instance just because of the frustration. Next is Black Temple. I just like the lore behind it is all. Escape from Durnhold Keep was fun, help Thrall and the other orcs get away so they could go found Orgrimmar, and that's it for runner-ups. And this is going to be a different kind of video, because I'm just going to run through these because the reasons why I like them is rather short, so we'll start with number 10. Moradon. This is an old one. One that I never did until I was able to solo it because I found it accidentally. I was going for either the Explorer or Lore Master achievement when I came upon this dungeon. After traversing the maze area to get to the entrance portal, I entered it and found it to initially be quite complicated. It was like a maze and it was huge. The first part of it was really dark and dank, but once you get to a certain point, the whole dungeon opened up into this beautiful oasis, really contrasting from the first part. But now there's an entrance that will take you to the oasis part, and the dungeon finder has it broken into 3 wings. I put this pretty low on the list because I don't think anyone goes to it anymore, and no one really did go through it due to lack of flight paths and deaths at the time of its release in patch 1.2, and now people only go through if they're going for a transmog gear or for an achievement. Number 9. Molten Core. One of the first 2 40-man raids, the other being Onyxia's Lair, which was replaced with a 10 and 25-man version in Wrath of the Lich King, leaving Molten Core to be the only remaining first 40-man raid. This was considered to be the ultimate raid for its time, especially because just to get to the Molten Core required you to go through Blackrock Depths, which was a massive dungeon and you needed to be attuned to it, doing a large quest line, but once that happened you were able to teleport to it, but the attunement requirement is no longer needed. The dungeon also contains the first piece of the Tier 2 Paladin set, known as Judgment, which has been regarded as one of the best looking sets in the game after patch 1.9, when they gave the design an overhaul. But like Moradon, I put it pretty low on the list, not because people don't run it, but because it shows its age and pretty badly. Even when the graphics were updated throughout the years, this was an area that wasn't touched upon and it could use some updating. I love lore, especially the lore in World of Warcraft, and when I saw the trailer for this raid that was being added in patch 3.1, and saw that it housed an old god, I was there. I had to do it. I love the history of Azeroth, and I'm really into the history of the old gods. Even now, they're still shrouded in mystery, and we've only seen 2, Cthulhu and Yogg-Saron. We've seen Y'Shaaraj's Heart, and only heard of Enzoth. There's supposed to be 1 more for a total of 5. The Titan architecture in this raid is so cool to look at. It's like looking at a futuristic Roman Empire. I've downed every single boss, and Yogg-Saron is one of the coolest bosses with some of the interesting and most fun mechanics. And knowing that Ulduar is his prison and not some fantastical city of the Titans or a vault of treasures only adds to the amazing story behind it. Number 7. The Culling of Stratholme. When the Death Knight became my favorite class, I loved learning about its history and enjoyed the Death Knight starter quests. Watching Arthas going from Paladin of Lordaeron to Death Knight of the Lich King to the Lich King himself throughout those quests was great, although I wish they showed off more, especially for those who didn't play Warcraft 3's Frozen Throne expansion. But taking part of the culling of Stratholme was fun, watching it get taken over by the undead and trying to stop it. You get to see that Arthas was right in his assumptions and his actions had the greater good in mind, but it slowly drove him to becoming the Lich King. Plus, this was the dungeon where I got my first dragon mount and it gave some insight into the infinite dragonflight. Although their intentions seem good but also seem evil, I think that's still up in the air. Number 6. End Time. So this is what Azeroth would look like when it ends if Deathwing's plans come to fruition, even resulting in his own death. I wish there weren't invisible walls everywhere, because I want to see Deathwing impaled upon Wyrmrest's temple up closer. Whenever I do this dungeon, I always get Jaina and Sylvanas to fight as bosses. I rarely get the Night Elf whose name I can't remember or Bane. But what's really scary about this, Murozond, the leader of the Infinite Dragonflight, and Nozdormuz, the leader of the Bronze Dragonflight who oversees time, future self, who says that he's seen the true end time, and what we see in the dungeon is a blessing that we can't comprehend. Which makes you wonder what the real end time would be like, because what we see here is apparently a good thing, which makes you wonder if stopping Deathwing is a good thing if this is the best ending for Azeroth. Number 5. Icecrown Citadel. The final showdown between the forces of Azeroth and the Undead Scourge. The first part of the Citadel seems rather normal, but when you get to the upper spire, you really see some freakish horror. The Plague Wing being the worst out of the three, showing some really horrific things that the Scourge is up to, and the boss of the section being a reference to Professor Farnsworth from Futurama adds some nice humor to it. Doing this raid feels like you're storming a castle, taking down the guards and other high-ranking members of the King's Court, and upon defeating the Lich King, the foreboding message left to you about always needing a Lich King is creepy. And with a new Lich King with noble intentions becoming the jailer of the damned, you wonder how true that's gonna be and if we'll be seeing a return to Icecrown. Number 4. Stratholme. What I like about World of Warcraft is that there isn't always a good ending to things, and Stratholme is pretty much the perfect idea of, well, that didn't work. Arthas went in, killed everyone, and set it on fire. And then the Scourge moved right in with Kel'Thuzad moving Naxxramas right over as his own base of operations. And defeating Stratholme was the only way to get into Naxxramas before they moved it to Northrend. I just like Stratholme. Its setup is fun and the lore behind it is pretty good. I like that it had 2 entrances and that the whole thing felt rather massive in size. Although having the Dreadlord Balthazar in it seemed rather odd along with the Scarlet Crusade, which to me didn't feel like it fit right in considering the Scourge took over the city, and they seemed to be the real threat instead of Balthazar. Number 3. Blackrock Depths. I think that I would have to say this is by far my favorite 5-man dungeon, because it's huge, and I mean massive in size. It's the largest 5-man dungeon in the entire game, and it can take a full party at the proper level around 4 to 6 hours to complete it. It's also the only place where dark iron can be mined, smelted into bars, or used to craft things for engineering and blacksmithing. The dungeon itself is pretty non-linear. I was able to skip past part of the city by closing the doors and using the walkway inside of them to skip a portion of it. I love Blackrock Depths because it's so big. Compared to all the other dungeons and especially the newer ones, it dwarfs them all. While most of the new 5-man dungeons have 3 bosses on average, Blackrock Depths has 21 bosses. And that's more bosses than any other dungeon or raid. It's a testament to how Blizzard used to make endgame content. They wanted you to have an adventure. Number 2. The Temple of Ahn'Qiraj. This was a raid that I always wanted to see. To me, it felt like it was a goal to complete it. I wanted to see Cthulhu and defeat it. Me and a friend of mine tried to down it at level 85, but the Twin Emperors gave us issues, because one is immune to physical attacks and the other is immune to magical. And with Death Knight abilities being a mix of both, it was actually very difficult for us. So we gave up on it. It wasn't until recently is when I was at level 100 and decided to solo it myself, and downed them with no problem, and then I moved on to Cthulhu and defeated him. AQ40 was a raid that I always felt like I needed to complete. The atmosphere is done really well and it feels like there's something evil lurking inside. And hearing the voice of Cthulhu haunting you as you make your way to him really helps with that feeling of dread, and that you're about to see some ancient horror that hasn't been seen in thousands of years. Number 1. Dragon Soul. No raid in the game feels as epic as this. There really is a feeling of urgency for this one. Thrall and the dragon aspects are really pushing you to hurry. There's just so much chaos on the ground with all the elementals fighting everyone and the dragonflights fighting with the twilight dragonflights. They did a really good job of letting you know that this is it. It's all or nothing, because if Deathwing succeeds, all is lost. And this raid has one of the most metal things I've seen in a game. You parachute onto the back of a giant dragon who is pretty much composed of lava, fight his immune system until it explodes and tears off his armor that's holding him together until he plummets into a giant whirlpool, and yet the fight still isn't over. This raid didn't feel like the others, and I think it's how they did the encounters. It feels like this has a lot more effort in this one than all the other raids I've gone through, and that's why it's my favorite.
And that's my top 10 favorite World of Warcraft dungeons and raids. And I'd like to know what yours are, so leave a comment below. And it doesn't even have to be World of Warcraft, just any MMO that you enjoy.